trying to find that.
This is where you're having to be like the podcaster and Jamie from Joe Rogan at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Jamie, can you pull that up?
I just was playing because I love the game. Like, and it's scary to me.
It's really easy for the game to become a job.
Below 6 in his hands, whistle his mouth.
Man, kids out there playing the game, staying out of trouble, competing. I love it.
Yeah, one of my favorite playoff games, Hutto. Hutto has the most memories for me just because we were good. You know what I mean? Like we won a lot of games that year, undefeated in regular season. And so, yeah, I think I would say the first playoff game we had was one of the best. Not because anything crazy happened besides the viral hit that you and I talked about before. That happened, but all seniors got to play, and when all seniors play, you get happy parents. You know, happy parents, happy community. You're good to go. It was the last home game for the seniors, so they got to leave their mark being the last home game as a W. So, yeah, it's playoffs are obviously a big deal in Texas. So that was my favorite time.
Slight pause for the intro. Yeah, we're gearing up for that. It's officially playoff time in Texas. We finished our regular season this past week. Similar to that, to what you just described. Peak of the night, best memory of Friday night. So I had a kid that has been in athletics. He's a cross country track kid. He's been in athletics from before I got here, and he's just a great kid. Works his tail off. Yes or no, sir. Does well in the classroom. Does well at workouts. Like, he's always pushing. And same thing with his brother. He's a runner but didn't play football. Well, brother joins a football team because he taught himself how to kick. Boom. Needed that. 2A kickers are hard to come by. He taught himself how. Boom. Starting varsity kicker. And all summer, at summer workouts and stuff, I joke with older brother, man, you gonna play? You gonna play? You know, haha, just kind of ribbing him, knowing that, he's been to regional cross country every year since he was a freshman. And he was like, I don't know. And then equipment pickup day, he brings little brother to get his stuff. And I was like, oh, you come to get your stuff too? He's like, I don't know, coach. And 10 minutes later, he just jumps out of the car and walks in. He's like, all right, let's do it. Never played football before, ever. And we ended up getting him a catch Friday in our last regular season game.
Oh, that's so
and
cool.
A little jet sweep, and he turned a corner, got a first down, got 14, 15 yards. And it was one of those where everybody was happy and pumped for him. And we, the coaches, were happy and pumped because, he may not be an All-American, but he's one of those kids that you want to have around the program. You want to have in the weight room. You want to have in the locker room. And those are one of those special moments that when you can fulfill something like that, it's super rewarding. But now we switch gears. It's playoff time, and got to get ready to roll.
Yeah. Who you guys got this week?
So we're playing Beckville Friday night at old Gladewater Stadium. So
okay,
head about an hour drive south and see if we can make some noise in the playoffs.
7:30?
No, 7 p.m.
Is Texas 7:30 or 7 p.m.? I was telling somebody the other day, I could have swore it was generally 7:30.
It used to be, and now it's probably 50-50. It's up to the districts, 7 p.m. or 7:30, and the biggest reason is realignments got kind of crazy since they added 6A, to where some districts are they're growing in mileage, so they're trying to squeeze that 30 minutes to get it, to make sure on those far commutes you're not getting home after midnight. Because I remember a few years ago, my high school offense coordinator was the head coach at LD Bell. LD Bell's on the northwest side of the Metroplex, kind of halfway between Fort Worth and Dallas. San Angelo Central was in their district.
Oh my gosh.
And for those that don't know, San Angelo is in the middle of nowhere. And so they looked at
Martin.
Yeah, shout out Jacob Martin, DC at San Angelo Central. Yeah. But so he said that what they were doing, that was really kind of the beginning of introducing 6A or 7 p.m. kickoffs. What they had a situation where their JV, so they were playing San Angelo at home, which meant their JV and freshmen were playing there. And So they had to pull the freshman and JV out of class at like noon
Golly.
to load up on the bus and drive. And then it's like, so you try and start at 5:00,
Yeah.
but even then, like let's say you start the JV game at 6:30. Say you have two JVs, say you have two freshmen. Like, how many games are you playing? There's a legit chance you're not leaving San Angelo, Texas until like 10. And it just becomes an absolute grind. So,
Yeah.
So teams have started to try and squeeze that 30 minutes out to make it for the commute. I mean, I remember when you were at Borger, y'all would play like neutral site sub-varsity games, right?
Yeah, we would. I mean, the big one, I remember when they changed the district, they put all the Amarillo schools in there with like Permian, and Odessa. And I want to say they ended up having to make a lot of those games on Saturday because that's like a 6-hour drive. And it's insane. I mean, I think at that time it ended up becoming a 10-team district. So you had one, normal game, and then you're going straight into district, and it was like, it was San Angelo's and your Odessa schools with Amarillo. I was like, that's such a disaster.
Yeah, and I mean, perfect example. For those that don't know, if you're from out of state, Texas is really big. And there's a lot of schools, and there's a lot of schools that play football. So, like, just to give you an idea of what that looks like, there are 3 first-round playoff games that are being played out of state. In fact, Greg Tepper just tweeted yesterday that the result of the Colorado-Texas Tech game was going to determine where a playoff game site was going to be. So a lot of times when you flip for sites, you pick odd or even, like home and away. Like when you flip for stuff, it's like, hey, odd or even. What the coaches decided on was if the total points scored in the game was an even number, they'd play here. And if it was an odd number, they'd play somewhere different. So, but yeah, three playoff games are being played out of the state of Texas, which is just absolutely absurd.
Where are those out-of-state games? Where are they going to be at?
So it's actually 4. I lied. Canyon West, Plains, and Clint are playing in Artesia, New Mexico. Canyon Randall and El Paso Ysleta are playing in Hobbs, New Mexico. Littlefield and Friona are playing in Clovis, New Mexico. And Wellington and Petrolia are playing in Lawton, Oklahoma.
Hey, that's all my area, baby. That's all the Panhandle for the most part.
That's all the Panhandle, baby.
Yep, middle of nowhere.
Hey, another one talking about your area. Tepper tweeted this out too. Aspermont will face Benjamin. This is 6-man football, 1A 6-man football. Aspermont will face Benjamin in the first round of the Texas High School football playoffs Friday. Instead of picking a neutral site, they're leaving it to Tech versus Colorado. Even number of total points playing at Aspermont. Odd number of total points at Benjamin.
How creative.
Dude, that's so bold though.
That is. It's very bold. Bold strategy there, Cotton.
And like, the realignment stuff, the ripple effect, the UIL does the best they can, but I think it's interesting how a lot of this stuff ends up playing out, and a lot those little quirky things are like why playoff football just becomes so insane around the entire state. Like, did you see the whole Manville versus Dobie final? So Dobie's in a tie for points, or a potential tie for points based off a record, and they were beating Manville by 14, and they have to throw a Hail Mary at the end of the game because if they won by 14, they wouldn't make the playoffs. And they completed a 38-yard Hail Mary to win by 20, which clinched their playoff spot and kept their season alive.
Dude. Me and a buddy of mine were talking about this. Actually, last night he texted me. Like, this is going to sound crazy, but like, why would you not just all-out blitz from now on Hail Mary?
That's a great question. I mean, drop 4, bring 7, and just
yeah, 100%.
See what happens.
That's right.
Especially because now, I mean, the Chiefs gave away the formula for the prevent defense against the Cowboys a few years ago with the little check down to Tyreek Hill, and you got 17 blockers downfield.
Correct.
I mean, I agree. I think that I think that sometimes, we said before, I think sometimes coaches overthink it. And like it reminds me of like the Belichick, like Gronk prevent where they hit the check down and then Gronk can't tackle. Like he's 300-pound tight end, 280-pound tight end. He can't, break down and like squeeze to the sideline. And, there's a difference in putting Randy Moss out there for an extra DB to bat down a jump ball versus like, oh, let's just put all the big guys back there because they still got to cover it in space. They still got to be able to move and tackle. So, no, I agree. I think especially at the high school level, I think that, if you solve problems with pressure, you put yourself in a pretty good situation the majority of the time.
Yes, I felt like the high school level, they're doing Hail Mary, jump in a bear front, and let's freaking go. Like, send the house. And how many times is that quarterback going to be able to maneuver, step up, make the throw? And likely, unless they have Tyreek, if you get back there quick enough, like, he'll have to throw the ball immediately. The ball is going to land probably before the receiver can get down there. Like, again, I'm an offensive guy speaking on a defensive strategy. I just think there's too many coaches out there that are scared to not do the norm because it might seem wacky and they look like an idiot. But I think it would work better than just
100%.
like letting them sit there and dance around and like step in the pocket and launch it. And
scramble out one way, set their feet. That way all the receivers can get to one corner. And then you just, you play tip drill and hope for the best and see what, I think we've seen enough examples over the past 5 to 8 years that like, crap, how many Hail Marys has Aaron Rodgers thrown for completions? Like, dude, if you got a dude down there, it's not a 50-50 ball. It's a 60-40 ball. Mm-hmm. So, no, yeah, I totally agree. I just thought that was crazy that like, because Manville still made the playoffs. Like they still go, they're still advancing as well. But like Dobie completes a almost 40-yard Hail Mary so they could win by the certain number of points to break the tiebreaker in their favor.
That's insane.
Absolutely. But, now you guys have wrapped up, right? Transitioning from in season to off season, right?
Yep. We're which means now we're no longer banned from the playoffs. Which means now moving forward, like think about it this way: like if you're a kid in our, in our world here, you're having to go through an off season and a summer, knowing that you can't make the playoffs. Like that's tough. And so, like, I commend the kids that stayed. Everybody stayed. We didn't lose a kid, because of that. So I commend the kids that stayed, knowing that they were going to play 10 games and that's it. I say that to say, like, now moving forward, like, I guess until that gift is taken away, you don't know the feeling and the hope that, like, hey, we could win state this year, which with that will provide for intrinsic motivation. And so now going into this offseason, like, we're obviously a week after our last game, but you're already seeing now the offseason grind, talking to the kids and like how they're breaking it down. It's like state, you know what I mean? Because they can actually go to state. For the last year, couldn't break it down on state because it can't go, so they're excited.
Yeah. It's just every offseason, every track season, every summer, everybody starts, undefeated and everybody's got a chance to make the state game. And, unless you're one of the few that has been handed that postseason ban, which it's happened here. And I think, I liken it to what we've seen at the college ranks, like with bowl bans and things like that. Obviously the SMU death penalty is the extreme, but like even Miami in the early 2000s when they got there, I think it was 1 year bowl ban. And then they had the decrease in scholarships and like now they get all creative and, they're recruiting Santana Moss as a walk-on. So because he's on a partial track scholarship and, they're able to like piece these things together and go make it happen. And it can show you a lot about the creativity and the fortitude of a staff and a locker room, because it would be really easy to like pack it in. Why would I come in the summer? Like we can't do anything after, week 10 anyway. What does it matter? Et cetera, et cetera. But I do, you can't deny the fact that no matter how bought in and how invested everybody is, once you get that carrot back to dangle in front of them, you can't deny the fact that it's going to turn things up just a little bit if there's any type of competitive fire within your locker room or your staff.
100%. There was a team that we played, actually the first game of our year this year out in Florida. And I've been talking with other coaches. We've gotten to know each other pretty well this season, and they were just handed a 2-year ban as of Friday, which sucks for them. And not fun or fair for the kids, So they're banned now, and they were undefeated this year. Actually, I think they had one loss, but I think that loss is maybe to um, our second opponent this year. But anyway, so they're banned for the playoffs this year and for next year. Um, so yeah, I mean, it can put your program through a lot of issues and um, losing kids, and so you're having to find creative ways to keep your kids there and say, hey, like what we did this year was like, hey, at the end of the day, playoffs or not, the one thing that you can always be assured of is there's going to be another human being across from you that's going to try to basically take your job, beat you up, destroy you, embarrass you for, let's say, 50 plays a game in front of your people. That's a guarantee. It's all football is at the end of the day. It's like you're trying to find like these little creative things to get the kids motivated, knowing that like, yeah, we're not making the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, but that kind of touches on something that has become more in the forefront of my mind this year is like, I think that, we've talked about adversity a lot, but it comes in all shapes and sizes. But I think the one form of adversity that everybody just kind of glazes over and like glosses over when it comes to sports is the like opponent adversity. Like what makes football and basketball and baseball and softball like exponent or, whatever, water polo, cricket, all these things where it's like one team versus another, right? The thing that makes those different is that you have a goal and an objective as a team, but there's somebody else on the field actively attempting to sabotage your plan to accomplish that goal because it interferes with theirs. And when you look at non-team oriented athletics, it's just a score-based system, right? When you look at golf, when you look at cheer, and if I rub people the wrong way, life's tough. Get a helmet. But when it's just based off of scores and a war, and like you go out there, there's no roadblocks, there's no adversity on the competition floor, and then you just get a result. That's a completely different realm of competition, and it produces a completely different result in the like growth and maturation of people, right? Because what that says is, here's your plan, practice your plan, go execute your plan, and when your execution meets your expectation, you'll get the results you want. Over here, practice your plan over and over and over with the anticipation of what your opponent's going to look like. And then when they change, you better have, they're going to throw a counterpunch. You better have one too.
Sure.
And it's apples to oranges, and people love to clump athletics and competition into this one big bubble. And it's simply not. And I think that that's the part that a lot of people kind of gloss over and they don't really address. Like the simple fact is that you spend months and months and months in preparation for these 10 weeks. And then the week before or the week of, you spend hours and hours and hours fine tuning that anticipated game plan with the expectation that this is who they've shown to be. This is what we're preparing for them to try to do to us. And when they don't, how do you respond? How do your kids respond? Or when they're better at it than you anticipate, how do you respond? How do your kids respond? And those other forms of competition, you don't have to deal with that. You get to just go out and do what you've always done and attempt to do it the best version. And the results are whatever you put out there. And it's just simply not the case in these team-oriented competitive scenarios. And I just hope that the world doesn't forget that, because it's starting to feel like they do.
Yeah. I mean, I think on the whole, when you're talking of sports, yeah, like no matter the sport, the lessons gained from it are very, very valuable. But I think when you're trying to compare something that requires more tactics because of an opponent versus another one where the opponent is basically yourself and how disciplined can you be? How can you execute what you're supposed to do? Yeah, I get it. Like in golf, or you have opponents and the team score, and even you're going against somebody else. So, not solely on your own, but when you're talking like true sports that have tactics to it, schematic tactics, that's where there's a few more lessons that can be learned there, and I think it makes it a little bit different because of the adjustments to your point that you're having to make on the fly. It's just a little bit different.
Yeah, and like I don't want to get on a soapbox or anything, but I just want to make sure that that's abundantly clear with the casual fan or the casual like observer, because it's not an equal playing field comparing one sport to another, and it's not apples to apples. And if you don't account for that, well, you're just making a choice of ignorance, and there's absolutely no point in doing that.
Yeah, well, I think it's important to know. Like, it's like we're not saying that if you're not playing football, you're not getting life lessons that this person is. I think you're getting those no matter what. So long you are doing a sport. Like I do think there are certain things that that you can pick up from golf
They're totally different.
That you will not pick up from football.
100%.
Yeah, like there's we're saying this is good versus good. It's just they're different.
And I think that word gets missed a lot in the description, comparison, whatever, is that but it doesn't have to be. And I think societally I think we've reached this point where it has to be good or bad. And like, that's not the two truths can exist at the same time. It can be good for young people, athletes, to play golf and handle the mental, emotional, isolation and the different types of adversity. And it can be good to deal with physical adversity, opposition adversity within a team sport, football, basketball. But we don't have to sit here and pretend like you learn the same lessons in things categorized as sports. They're not all the same. They're not approached all the same. They don't require the same things. And it's ignorant to pretend that, well, if I just do a sport, then I get all the same positives. Incorrect.
Totally different. I mean, every sport is going to provide different life lessons for you. It's completely different.
I don't know where I go next.
Let me take my headphones. No way. It's still 17%. There's no way.
All right, hold on. Okay, I know where I'll go next.
Where are you going?
I'm going to circle back to my favorite playoff memory so far.
All right.
So we started, you were talking about, at Hutto and one of your favorite playoff memories. And I just want to circle back and kind of, share one of mine. We've talked about a couple different playoff games here, and there's different ones for different reasons, but I would say it's really hard to beat the first big game like playoff experience that I had, which was my first year at Salina. We played Gilmer over in Mesquite. I was just the receivers coach, just first year at the high school ranks. I was told that summer before we started, I was like, listen, we got a lot of seniors. They've played a lot of football. Teach them some technique stuff. They know the offense better than you. Just make sure they get on the bus. And so you kind of having that perspective it was weird because usually, and from that, I never had another season like that, right? Like as soon as it didn't matter what year it was, how many seniors we had, there was always concept and technique that was constantly having to be fixed and whatnot. But that group was just different and special. And cruise through the regular season and cruise through the first 4 rounds of the playoffs. And then we go up to play Gilmer and immediately go down like 17 points. And nobody, they at previous seasons had experienced this, but nobody that year had experienced trailing in a game. Not only are we trailing, but we're trailing by, 3 scores. And the anticipation and the energy and the how are we going to handle this, watching the kids' behavior, the body language. It was one of those things where they talk about like moral laws, and it's like, well, how do you know something's, morally wrong? And it's like, I don't know. Like, I can't describe it. When I see it, I know it. And it was one of those moments where like, I don't know what it is, but the vast majority of our kids have it. And watching the way that certain things played out, you could watch it as a casual fan and be like, oh, that was lucky. Oh, that was lucky. Oh, this was lucky. And it's like a lot of these kids created we sealed the game. Kind of. We didn't really seal it because Gilmer was still really good. We have a one score lead. They drive down. They're probably in like plus 40, plus 38 territory. Drop back, quick game, tip ball. And the Mike linebacker who's spying the quarterback, it's tipped, it floats, he picks it off, runs it in, pick six. Now it's a 2-score game. There's like less than 2 minutes left. But what does Gilmer do? Because they're a great football team who had won a state championship the year before, they turn around, boom, 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 march down, they score. So now it's like, oh crap. Like there's less than a minute left, but like here comes the onside kick. And one of our seniors recover it and we're able to kneel it out. And it was, pandemonium. But that whole roller coaster of emotions of being down for the first time and it being by double digits and then coming back and making all these plays and punches to counter punches, like that's what the game was all about. And it really set me up to have unrealistic expectations of coaching high school football, high school playoffs, and the teams that I would be a part of. But it also set me up for the next summer when I met Jeff Traylor, just to start off on the absolute worst foot possible. We're out at the Angelo Clinic, and my buddy, Andrew Souter, who coached college ball for about 10 years and has now moved over to like the agency side. He knew Traylor. And Traylor was at Texas at the time and they were trying to get Souter to come down there and join the staff. And we sit down to have barbecue out at the Angelo Clinic. And he introduces me to Coach Traylor, and I worked with there were Gilmer guys on staff, and he was like, so you're at Salina? Yes, sir. And he was like, you ruined my son's senior year. I was like,
yes.
I mean, not purposefully. I'm sorry. I don't. This is so. And he was cool about it. Like, it's one of those things where like he was a big time high school coach that had made the jump to the Division I level, was at Texas, and like, I mean, this is kind of the trajectory professionally that I think I still want to have. And he just looks at me with such disdain, and he's like, "You ruined my son's senior year." I was like, "My bad. I don't know where I go from here, sir. I just, I'm just going to eat my brisket and, pretend I don't exist so you two can talk about whatever you wanted to. Please don't be mad at me anymore." So.
Oh my God. Did y'all actually end up conversing, or like, was that?
Oh yeah. I mean, once the guilt that was clearly on my face dissipated, 30 seconds later, he was talking to Souter, and Souter did a great job of like bringing me into the conversation, and Traylor was cool. It was not serious, but yeah, I don't know the guy. It could have been like in that first 5 seconds when he says it, I'm like, this dude's going to hate me. Like, because he had played, his last year at Gilmer, they beat Salina in the semis, go on, win state. He leaves, and I think his brother took over, but his son was a senior at Gilmer. Okay. And so like, I don't know how real that is. I don't know if he's like, I hate Salina. Like, that's one of our playoff arch nemesis or whatever. I don't know how deep that runs. Like, I never met the guy. I've only been part of this game once. After that, we ended up playing him 2 more times. And so then I was a little bit more entrenched into that kind of rivalry. But at the time I was like, this dude hates me. It's because I wear orange and white and he wears orange and black. Like, oh crap, but it was not that serious. It was all good. So, but there was a good 30, 40 seconds where I was like, I'll just sit over here and pretend I don't exist. With all that being said, to jump back into, we kind of talked about, but like, what are you doing now? Like, what are the kids doing now? It's, you're up at the field house, you're still watching 6-7 hours of film a week. Like, what's your off season, like itinerary plan, like expectations right now?
Yeah. So kids are lifting, in my opinion right now, especially before Christmas, it's the time to where the kids got to go become best friends with the strength coach. They need to get away from our faces and be in the weight room and, be gym rats. As far as what we're doing now, and you got to keep in mind too, like, we're not a full-time staff. Like, we only have offensively like 3 guys that are essentially really 2 guys that are full time. So all the other ones that are kind of stipend base, they're kind of just taking a break, and then they'll be back in the office here pretty soon. But my plan right now, like I'm going back through, and now we're gonna start watching all third down, all red zone, all open field, and then we're gonna start going through and okay, what runs were good for us this year and why were they not? So we'll watch all inside zone variations and all wide zone variations and all pass game, and then before Christmas we'll start going over depth chart and okay, as of now, a way too early projection. Who are we? What are we going to be going into spring ball? What we want to see, and then obviously we're going to have all the exit meeting stuff, from a position group perspective. And so, hey, here's where we see you as of now. Here's what we would like to see you going into the off season, coming out of the off season, and going into spring ball. So, I mean, you know how it is. Like it never ends. There's always something to do. And so, yeah, as of now, I'm just kind of going back through every clip we've gone through this year, and all right, here's our efficiency on third down and 3rd and 3 to 6. Why? 3rd and 7 to 9. Why? Oh my gosh, on 3rd and 3 to 6, we were 78% run. Need to fix that. I mean, that's not real, but that's just an example. So that's kind of the expectation now. And then something that we did at Vanderbilt, which I really appreciated in around January off season, and now we had GAs and QC, so you had more resources. But is the OC would hand out projects to each, not only QC and GA, but full-time coach as well. As far as like, for example, hey, TK, I want you to spend the next 2 to 3 weeks watching all the G schemes from Duke. I want you, Coach McLean, to watch all the play action from Texas this year. I thought it was a cool way, and I'm going to do it with my staff this year too. I thought it was a cool way to be able to kind of get outside of your world, get an idea and a vision of what other people do, and does it fit what we do? And if they're better at what they do than how we do it, why are they better? And then you can always steal things from other people as well. So we'll probably do some of that this offseason as well.
So to piggyback off of that, let me ask you this. When you came back to Lipscomb, how much did you do that with the 22 team before? Like, how much, because the team, the makeup, the expectation, the philosophy, like your personality, it had to change the offense. Or does that still play into a big fact? Because I know like how I handled it when I first got here, but I'm curious, like how much of that, previous self-scout did you use in preparation for this season that just finished?
Yeah, you're talking in regards of the previous years, the team. Yeah, so if you look at Lipscomb from the time that the year after I left and the following 2 years, the amount of kids they got, the Jimmies and Joes were very, very different. Very different. There was no chance anybody was going to go man coverage against them. So, like, I did some scouting stuff, and I still think that some people in our community, even now, see things through the lens of 2021, 2022, and it's just like, y'all are delusional. Like, if you can't look out on the field right now, and it's not to like disrespect the guys we have, I mean, they're just different, but it's like, you are crazy to sit here and say, oh, we have the same talent now that we had in 21 and 22. You're insane. Like, no. Like that took years to develop, and that's a plan to do it now. It's like, I hope, a year or two from now, like we look up and we're in that same world. And so, self-scouting, a little bit of it. Yeah. But there's so many things that I think that, that team did in 21 and 22 from a schematic perspective that you look at and it's like, well, I mean, yeah, like how much of those schemes were their dudes better than their dudes? And then how much of it is like, oh, that's a really good scheme. And every once in a while there was, but it's like, I think being at Lipscomb then and then transitioning to a Vanderbilt, what I got to see at Vanderbilt, and it's just, let's call it what it is. We're never going to be more athletic than the other team. Never. And so I got to learn, studying under Joey Lynch and those guys of like how to truly scheme to not only get a hat for a hat, but most of the time an extra hat, whether it's in the run game or the pass game and trying to get more leverage. and how to do that, because that's the only way that you're even going to have a chance to gain a yard. Not even maybe a first down, but gain a yard. And so, like, as we're transitioning forward, it's like, you know, I think you look at your talent, and this year is more like, okay, similar approach. Like, how can we get better leverage? I think you're always doing that. But as you begin to get better players, it is so much easier to say, okay, like, here's our volume, right? Here's our players. And all of a sudden, as you start having your players go up, well, then here's your volume now. You know, now once you reach the point where you feel like you've become an Alabama, well, then, yeah, I mean, I still think if your players are always here, I don't think the volume ever has to get there. But once you become a true rolling machine, like once you go players and then now you can get here, that's when you're like the most dangerous team, in my opinion. That's the Chiefs, that's, the Niners, like that's those teams where it's like, man, they got dudes, but their scheme is also so structured and it's so good. And so that's what we're trying to work for now, but we'll see. I think that's everybody's goal.
Yeah, I think that there's two approaches to like the off-season self-scout is like, who are you, like, personnel-wise, are you going to be very similar or very different? Because if it's very different, now I've got to self-scout Jimmy's and Joe's.
Yeah.
If it's going to be very similar, I've got to self-scout execution, concept, etc. And like when I got here, I had to do one before I could even factor in whether I needed to do the other. I needed to go in and watch and figure out what are they good at, what are they not good at, what can they do, what can they not do, who's coming back, who's not. And then based off of that, who's coming back, who's not, does any of the what do they do good, what do they do bad matter? Because if whether you're taking it over or you're there and it's just you graduate, 9 of 11 starters or 18 of 22 starters, if you're in that boat, then it's like, no, I need to go watch the reps of our sub-varsity. I need to go watch the reps of our twos, and I need to figure out what are these guys. We got to dive into the personnel self-scout, not the concept self-scout. But if I return 18, 19, 20 starters, now I can go deep into conceptual execution and re-pour the foundation and fix the cracks and crevices and really rebuild that house the way that I remember 20 to 21. So in 20, we had seniors, but by the end of the year, we started on the offensive side. I think we started 5 sophomores, which in Salina was like unheard of. And then on top of that, we started, 4 juniors. So like we were bringing back 9 or 10 starters, like feeling very good. So we had the ability to, because of the kids and because of the personnel returning, to not just self-scout concept, but then roll into day 1 of two-a-days and be like, whole playbook's on the board. We can run all 35 formations today, and then going back to 22, even though we returned 5 starters, 4 starters, whatever it was, understanding that we cannot do that because even though we got 30 seniors coming back, 21 of them haven't started yet, and they're going to be introduced to new roles and new expectations. And we got to go back a little bit to square one and identify what they're good at, tweak the playbook accordingly. And that was each year that I was at Salina as the play caller presented a new learning experience that made the timing of when I left and became a head coach so much better. Because if I'd have left after year 1, I would have just thought that it was all about play calling. And like, once you get the guys in the right spots, you just get the guys in the right spots as fast as you can, you'll be fine. And then if I left after year 2, it would just be like, well, just push the envelope in the off season, mentally get them as prepared as possible. So you can roll in with, the Cheesecake Factory menu.
Yeah.
And then experiencing that first off season, that second off season, and going into 22, it was like, no, now we're preparing a different way. Now we're self-scouting a different way. And now we can attack appropriately because these pieces are changes. Expectations for that person is changing. His body's changing. He's got to do this, but he can't do it as good as the guy that just graduated. So we got to tweak our alignment, our concepts a little bit here and there. And each of those presented a piece of that kind of led to the big picture that I think I have now. So it's it's a really hard piece because it's a really hard piece of the offseason because if you go about it wrong, you end up wasting a lot of time, and A, you'll never get it back, and B, you're limiting your ability to maximize whatever your group's potential is.
I agree. I think one thing, when I become a head coach one day, and I've learned this kind of obviously throughout my journey, is if I'm hiring an OC, what makes an OC masterful, in my opinion, is his ability for 1 year to make a masterpiece that is like Van Gogh. And then the next year, it's like Bob Ross. And the next year, it's like Da Vinci, right? They're all masterpieces. And I think that the only commonality on all of those things was there was a signature at the very bottom and you knew who it was. I think when you're finding an OC, and I'm not trying to like disrespect certain styles, but it's like being multiple now means more to me than ever, because if you go up to me and say, hey, I'm an air raid guy, well, that's cool. And that works. But especially at the high school level, like, what if we don't have those guys to be air raid? Do you know enough ball, not air raid, but do you know enough ball to be able to put our kids in the right position? And so now on the flip side of that is you have guys like, oh, we're multiple, but you never see his signature on the painting. And it's like, well, you are multiple. You just do a bunch of random things, but you have no signature. And so I think what makes an OC masterful is being able to be multiple enough within your brain to be able to put pieces together, to get good schemes in there, but at the same time to mold this masterpiece together where year by year it may be different, but it's your signature still, and there is an identity. So long you have the identity and your signature, you'll be successful. I just think a lot of people struggle with that.
100%. I think the other part of it is that knowing a lot of ball and being able to coach a lot of ball, they're not the same.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, and I think that's become abundantly clear. Like, hand up, I will never pretend to know the most about football. It's, for anybody listening, shock of the day, Trent knows way more football, way more offense than I do. It is not even close. What I feel confident and comfortable about me is that what I do, I make sure I know really well. And if I, you go back to, 3 years ago, first conversation we had on this thing, you're either coaching it or allowing it. And just because I tell you to step down at a 45-degree angle with your right foot, if you don't go out there and do it, then I'm not a very good coach. And then, nothing presses by buttons more than, coach, I told him. Because I don't care what you tell him. I care what you coach him. And if I tell you I know this and I can do this and I can do this and I can do that, but none of my resume, none of my huddle, none of my previous seasons in whatever capacity prove that I can get teenagers to go execute it, then I may know it, but I can't coach it. And so you better make sure that whatever you think you know, you better be able to coach.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'll make a little PSA too, like for those of you young coaches out there, I'm still young too. A, Travis has a ton of ball. Don't let him fool you. B, where he's smart in what he's doing and what he's saying is what every coach should do, in my opinion, which is like the moment that you as a coach are willing and able to sit there and say, I know so much football, is the moment that you are publicly announcing you're an idiot. You are publicly announcing you actually don't know football. And we've said this before, but the more that you actually study this game, the more you realize you don't know jack. And so I try to make an announcement, every year to my staffs, like, hey, yeah, I just have the title of the OC, and I just happen to be the one that verbally calls the plays. But we, as a whole group, are the coordinators, and we are all doing this together. This has to be a collective force because you guys, like, I need you guys to have ownership of your own ideas. And I think you empower the staff when you do that. But like the amount of plays we ran this year that were, obviously not my idea. I mean, it's so many, and I think at the end of the day, like what's going to make you a great coach is the moment that you're willing to like raise your hand and say, "Hey, I don't know anything. Here's what I do know, and let's try to help put these puzzle pieces together." You do that, like now you as a collective staff can be a force to be reckoned with. But yeah, as a young coach, man, just it's okay to not know anything at all. And the moment I think you admit that you don't know anything is the moment that you admit that you're probably pretty good at coaching ball and you're probably a pretty smart, mature young man.
I remember being 23 and you were 21, going to visit Coach Kaz and his staff, thinking, we know it all, man. You read a ton. I've experienced a ton. And the strength coach looked at us in the face and said, hey, just because it's old doesn't mean it's bad. And I was like, wait, what does that mean? And it was a coach that I respected. And then I had at coaching school one summer, I had a coach tell me, the more football I learn, the more I realize I don't know. And I got into the profession thinking I knew what Coach Browse does. I knew it inside out. I felt super confident in it. And then every day I learned something new, and I was like, I don't know Jack. I don't know Jack.
Yep.
I don't know Jack. And the sooner you realize how little you know, the faster you'll learn a lot more.